It's Klayton, aka Celldweller, and I am here today in collaboration with Vintage King Audio to talk to you about the Make Noise sound hack Morphagene. So at its heart, the Morphagene is a tape and microsound music module that uses real splices and genes to manipulate and reconfigure sounds. So the Morphagene has an SD card that holds several reels. Each reel can be up to 87 seconds long and can contain up to 99 slices. You have control over the gene size, which zooms in on a splice, and it changes the playback window's size, so you can go from extremely short sounds to the full length of the splice by controlling this knob. You've got a bipolar vari-speed panel here, and that basically controls the speed and the direction of your sound. So if you are clockwise, your sound is playing forwards, and if you're counterclockwise, it's playing backwards at different speeds, and if you're at 12 o'clock here, your sound is completely stopped. I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. The slide control travels through the splice in time. So counterclockwise, you're at the beginning of your splice, that's where it's triggered and that's where it'll play, and as you go more clockwise, the beginning part of your trigger is later into the splice. Again, I'll show you some examples of that. The morph parameter controls the amount of overlap from one gene to the next. The morph panel allows the genes to be staggered, stacked in layers, which produces some really cool effects. You have a clock input, and every time that receives a gate high signal, it will synchronize your record, gene size, and morph parameters. There's also an organize parameter which allows you to change the different splices within your reel. I have a sound in here right now which we're not hearing, but I cut it up into different splices, and as you see when I rotate this clockwise, the color of that splice indicator is changing, showing you that you are actually selecting a different splice. There's also a time lag accumulation mode, and it's something sort of similar to what was found in the Phonogene. On my Black Star score, there's a song called Echoes in Time, and I only used 3 modules for that, which were the Make Noise DPO, the Make Noise Wogglebug, and the Make Noise Phonogene, which was in using this time lag accumulation mode. So if you want to hear an example of that, check that track out. I set up a little audio example here, and I picked a random sample from my instrument transport, which has thousands of samples that I've made on all of this gear. I picked one that I thought sounded cool and I thought might sound cool chopped up. And I played it in and recorded it into the Morphagene. And I've already manually spliced up different splices within that reel. So the raw sound sounds like this. So I recorded that in, spliced it up, and when I take the sound on sound control here, which when it's all the way counterclockwise, you're hearing only your live input. When you turn it all the way clockwise, you've got full Morphagene playback. And you can blend anywhere in between that. Also, I'd like to note that you don't necessarily have to record in. You can load sounds onto the SD card and then actually load them into the Morphagene from the SD card. So you can load reels from that card that you've saved from your computer. So the sound is playing right now, and we're not hearing it because I have the pressure point set up to actually open up the envelope so we can hear the sound. So until I press it, you won't hear anything. So your vari-speed control will play your splice forwards or backwards depending on where it is, and if it's at 12 o'clock, it won't play anything at all. Check this out. So I've set my morph control so that each splice I'm playing loops perfectly. If you have it all the way counterclockwise, there'll be a little space in between each splice, and you'll hear that audible space. It's intentional. But you can put it at about 9 o'clock and your sound will loop. And then the more you turn that morph control up, you'll hear things will get even cooler and crazier as you get more of that kind of sound on sound effect. So I'm all the way counterclockwise on my organized control, which means I'm playing the first splice, which is indicated by that blue light. So here I'm just going to open my envelope on my VCA so you can hear the sound. Sounds pretty similar to what I put in already. And now I'm going to manually now change through some of the splices so you can hear how I chop them up. And you'll know that I'm changing splice because the color will change on the splice indicator. So already you can kind of hear the possibilities. If you were just to put a control voltage into the organized control and send some random voltages or some tuned voltages in, you can kind of really change up your sound and get a lot of variations just with that alone. Never mind all of the other voltage control you have over all of the other parameters. So let me show you a little example of what gene size does. So I'm going to pick a splice, a random splice, which will be the first splice right now. And you'll see as I'm changing the gene size, if my splice is this big, as I turn the gene size control clockwise, it's making that splice smaller and smaller and smaller. Now another really cool thing that you have control over is the ability to slide your sound. So let's say you have a splice and your gene size is only playing this much of it. Your slide amount will allow you to slide what portion of that sample is playing back within the splice. So let's show you an example of that. So by manipulating the morph control, you actually start layering more iterations of the sound over itself in varying ways. And you can look at the manual if you want more specifics of how that's actually playing out depending on where your control is. But I think one of the best ways to kind of determine how cool this is by simply hearing it. I wanted to give you single isolated examples of each of the functions so you can kind of hear what they do. But where this gets really cool is when we start actually controlling multiple parameters with voltage. And so I'm going to use the make noise pressure points brains combination to send tuned voltages to different parameters into the Morphagene. So I loaded up some drum one-shots from my software instrument transport just to have a beat to kind of play to. And I'm going to play the pressure points. Each one of these will actually trigger a different splice and different settings for a few of the other controls. And I'm going to manually control, you'll see with my left hand, I'll be manually controlling the gene size and occasionally the morph knob as well. And you can kind of hear how you can get massively interesting results out of just one single reel. And remember, there's lots of splices within a reel and those can contain lots of different sounds. So there's a ton of possibilities here. But let's just get into it and take a listen. Thanks for sticking all the way through this episode of Celldweller Production. I hope that gave you a small overview of the vast capabilities of the Make Noise Sound Hack Morphagene. There's more stuff like this coming to my channel, so subscribe to my channel or save this playlist. And if you need a Morphagene in your life, head over to vintageking.com and they will get one to you ASAP. So until next time, this is Klayton, aka Celldweller, signing off.